We'll get started with this session. In this session, we'll be covering file input output. So this is one major topic of Java. So over here, till now we have worked with how to work with variables, arrays and all. But we haven't done any actual storing of data or information into our system. We mostly using some variables or some data to store like an array or a string, but we have actually anywhere written anything to the disk. Okay, so in this session we'll actually see how to write data to the disk, or in other words it is nothing but persistence. Okay, how do you use persistence? So the prerequisite for file IO is you should be well aware of exception handling. That is nothing but the try catch block and also the finally block, and you should also know how to use the keyword throw and throws. Mostly in file IO we'll be getting only one, the most common exception is the IO exception, because we'll mostly be working with files. So file not found exception and basic IO stuff, because all this is in the IO package. So today we'll be covering IO streams, input output streams, how to create files and some basic file operations. Okay. So stream is nothing but a sequence of data. So a sequence of data is nothing but all bits, right? Zeros and ones. So a stream is nothing but a sequence of data. And there are two types of streams. One is the input stream. As the name suggests, it is used to read data from a source. So source over here can be a file, and there are other sources as well. So but for today's session we'll be covering only files. So we'll be using only file input stream or something like that. And an output stream is used to write data to a destination. So over here also the destination will be a file. So you read from a file, you write to a file, or you read from a file and perform some operations and again write to another file. So like that. So an input stream may be associated with the keyboard or a file. So you can either take input from the keyboard or from a file. Okay. Moving on. So what is an input stream? Like I said, a stream is a sequence of data. So all zeros and ones, and you actually read from a data source, which can be a file or a disk or anywhere, and you use it in your program. Okay. Similarly, output stream is you from your program you take some data, you do some operations on that and you store it. So into a file or a database or anywhere. So wherever you want you can do all this. So this is an output stream. So all streams are a sequence of data. So it can all zeros and ones because it is machine read, right? So how do you work with IO streams? So the first thing that you'll need to know is you should import this statement java.io.star, because all IO operations are there in this package, IO package. So you'll need to import this package. Then you'll need to open the stream. Whatever stream you want to work with, you'll need to open that stream. Then you do all your operations, like you either read from you write, or you do both the operations, and you close the stream. So these four operations are most important. I mean, like these are the only operations that you can do. Okay. So how do you open a stream? So if you see a basic common term or something, input stream is a common term. So any input stream will have these two. So let's say you're working with a file input stream. So it will be file input stream. Let's say you're working with an output stream. It will be file output stream. So it is that simple. So there are other input streams as well, like data input stream, buffered input stream, pipe input stream. So all this, but mostly we'll be working with the file input stream and the buffered input stream, buffered reader. So there are two classes basically. One is the input stream and the output stream. The other is the reader and the other is the writer. So to perform operations. Okay. So but the file stream is this. You open the file stream. you give the file stream a file name. Okay, so over here you need to make the check whether the file exists or not. So let's look at an example. So how do you create a file in Java? So let's say there's no file, so we can consider the example that we did in the exceptions class, right? So we checked if a file exists or not. If the file doesn't exist, we say file not found. Okay, so if you recall that example that we did, so we'll change this example, and what we'll do is we'll see if the file exists. If the file doesn't exist, we'll create that file. So the example is as simple as what we just discussed. So you're checking if you're creating an object of file f saying myfile.txt. Okay, and now you're checking if the file exists. So f.exists is the method. So exists is the method which returns true or false. Okay, if the file exists, it's well and good. If the file doesn't exist, you create a new file. Okay, so all these methods are very pretty much straightforward. I mean, like plain simple English terms. So you create a new file and you say myfile.txt has been created. You can actually try out this example. You can copy paste this example from the PPT that is there in the portal and try out this example if you want to. But it's pretty straightforward. Like you can run this code and you can see that myfile.txt is actually created on your hard disk. Okay, so this is a very simple and basic example of creating a file. So moving on. So like we mentioned, there are four kind of operations. You either open a file, you read from a file, you write to a file, and you close a file. So these are the four operations, and this is the first and the last are the basic operations. Like you open the file and it has to be closed. You can either read and you can either read or write. Okay. So how do you open a file? So like I mentioned, there are two classes, other classes, right? Reader and writer. So reader is the class that you normally use to open a file. Okay, so reader again has some other methods which we want you to explore further. So you can actually go to the Java API and check for all these classes: the file input stream, file output stream, buffered reader, buffered writer, all these classes, and see, I mean, like what are the methods that are available and all. Okay, so coming over here, so what this statement does is it creates a object of buffered reader, and if you see over here, we are again passing a file reader object to the buffered reader. Okay, so the file reader, it actually opens a file. So it says, okay, you read this file called myfile.txt and you pass it to the buffered reader. Okay, if myfile.txt is not there, you get an exception or an error, file not found. So you need to catch this exception as well. So you use this statement in a try catch block. Okay, so moving on. So again, there are other streams like I mentioned, right? There's also data input stream. So it's a different variation of the file input stream. It's a data input stream. So each one of the input streams has a specific purpose why it is defined. So the data input stream is used to read primitive data types. Okay, so it can be like integer, float and all. So if you are working with numbers, it's better that you use this data input stream. If you are working with say strings and all, you can use another input stream. So that is for you to decide like what you want to use and all. So moving on. So over here, if you see the buffered reader, it reads the text from a character input stream. Okay, buffering characters. So we'll actually see a full-fledged program how to read from a file. Okay, so if you see this code, we put all this code in the try block because we expect, yes, there will be some error that will come of this because of this. That exception can be a file not found exception because text file.txt might not be there, or else it can be any other exception. So any exception related to the IO class can be caught, and so we are putting a common exception. Like if you recall the example that we did in the exception class, we mentioned that file not found exception, right? So that is one particular kind of exception. Whereas if you just put exception E, this exception, if you remember, it's the superclass of all the exceptions, right? So it can catch any exception that will arise in this block. So it's a good practice to actually put exception E instead of mentioning any particular exceptions that you find will occur. So that will actually help you, and I mean, like, your code will be much simpler. And to know what exception was caught, you will just need to say e dot get message. So if you say e dot get message, the stack trace that we saw in the previous session will be displayed. Okay. So if you remember the stack trace, the lot of lines that were displayed when an exception was generated. So all that will be displayed over here. So that's the e dot get message. Okay. So coming back to this exception, to this example, you see over here we are actually first creating a file input stream, giving a text file. We are giving a file, and this object we are passing to a data input stream, because the buffered reader will need to use this stream. Okay. So over here, all these lines of code, I mean, like, you can I mean, like, this will become easy for you if you start coding these lines of code, because all these lines of code are important. Like, you can't miss any one of these. Okay. And so if you see over here the buffered reader, you can actually read line by line. So instead of reading character by character, you can actually read line by line. I mean, like, there are other methods also. You can there are different methods, like read is a method, read next int is a method, read float is a method. So all these, they are different methods. So you are I mean, like, you are supposed to actually explore all these methods and see what each method does. So you can actually go to the Java API which is there, and you can explore for yourself. Like, I mean, like, this example is a basic example for you to get started. I mean, to use file IO. I mean, the tasks that are there actually expect that you need to see the Java API, know about the different methods and the different classes that are there, and for you to use those. So don't think that all the exercise problems or the tasks can be done using this example. You'll need to explore for yourself as well. Okay. So over here, if you see, we are printing the line by line. So if you already have a text file, if you want to read line by line from that, you can actually use this line of code. So what I'll do is I'll run this code and we'll see what's happening. Okay. So I'll share my desktop. I think I already have a file. Let's see if I have the file. Okay. So this is the code that is there. So what I'll do, I'll save this, and let's run this code and see what's going to happen. So I have a file read is the file name. So file read.java. So if you see, a lot of errors are there. So I think there's some problem while I copy. So some errors while I mean, like, the Unicode errors are there. So it's better I don't get into this. Okay. What I'll do is I'll encourage you to copy paste this code, because there are some errors while we are copying this. So try and type this code in your notepad and see. This actually works. So this is a tested code. So but for this code to work, you should have a text file. So text file.txt which contains some text. Okay. So if you have this file, this code will work and it will print line by line whatever is there in your program, in your text file. So you can try this on your own. Don't copy paste this, because there are some errors while copy pasting, like there's some Unicode characters that are coming. So don't copy paste, type this code and see for yourself. So you can also actually change some lines of code, maybe work with different files and see what's happening. you can also change this method, the read line method, and work with different methods like read. Just use read method, use a read int and try. So all different ways that you can actually explore the programming language. I mean, like, and know for yourself like what actually happens and all. Okay. So moving on. Okay, moving on. So we've seen how to read from the file. Now we'll see how to write to a file. So like I mentioned, it's pretty straightforward. We have a writer class. So we use a buffered writer. Earlier we used the buffered reader, right? So over here we'll use the buffered writer, and the code is pretty much same. So if you see over here, you will need to use a writer, all writer classes, and the method is out.write. It's as simple as that. So if you run this line of code, this program, out.txt will be created. It's a file, and hello Java will be returned to that file. Okay. So this is pretty much simple. This is very much simple, and moving. So I hope this is clear. It's pretty straightforward. We'll just need to use a buffered writer and a file writer because you are writing to the file. Okay. So moving on. So the other operation that we saw is closing a file, right? So how do you close a file, and why do you need to close a file? So in the exception handling class, we've seen that code needs to be cleaned up, right? So what is cleaning up? So if you are opening a file, there's some resource that is being allocated to that, right? So if you see over here, you're creating some objects over here. So all this out.write, you're opening a file and all. So all these resources need to be cleaned up explicitly. So even though Java has this garbage collection, it's better that you explicitly clean up, explicitly in the sense you write your own code to clean up any resources that were opened. So it will be useful, like just in case the garbage collection fails, your resources should be accessible. Let's say you don't clean up your code, you might at times get errors while you're working with that file. So let's say you forgot to put this line out.close in your file, and you save this file and you start working with this out.text. At times you may get errors while you're working with this text file. You can try it out for yourself and you can see the difference. So you might get an error saying this resource is already being used. These kind of errors. So it's better that we clean up the code, clean up any resources that we have opened. So for that, if you remember, we use the finally block, right? So you can also put your code in the try block if you feel that if you feel that your code will run properly and there won't be any exceptions. You can actually put your cleanup code in the try block itself, but it's good practice to use the finally block because there's no guarantee that our code will not generate an exception, right? So let's say your code generates an exception, the flow won't come to this line, but it will go to this line, to the catch block, right? So it's better that you move this out.close to the finally block. I hope that is clear. So all closing of file statements should be put in the finally block. Okay. So this is how you will need to close a file. So bw.close. It's a simple one-line statement. You just need to say close. If it's a buffered writer or a buffered reader, you'll need to just close it. So all this will actually work. So moving on. So this is a program. So you'll need to work out this task now. So you can actually use this PPT. All the examples are there. So you use all the examples that were provided and try out this task. So you'll need to write a program that writes 100 random numbers to a file random.txt. So you can actually use the buffered writer. Okay, and once these numbers are written, we'll need to read the data from that file and see how many fall under the category of tens, hundreds and thousands. So this is nothing but all the numbers that are in this category, like tens, let's say 90, 80, 70, all such numbers are under the category of tens. Under the category of hundreds is 100, 200, 300, 400, all that. And thousands is 1000, 2000, 3000, like that. So you can try out this task. All the examples, I mean, like all the code that you need is already there in the example problems. So most of the code will come from here in this example, the writer example, because you'll be writing to the file, and when you're reading, you'll need to use these lines of code. So please work out this task and let me know if you're facing any issues. So I'll be here to to help you. So this is, mind you, this session is only a basic overview. So there's a lot of content in File.io which we want you to explore. So I hope you've got enough grip of what learning by doing is. So from now on, like, all these sessions will not be will be like this. I mean, like, we'll be giving you only the basic overview of the concepts. You'll actually need to explore for yourself, learn more, and work out the tasks and problems. So please look at the example problems that are already given and try out this problem. Once this is done, you can let me know, so we can then proceed. So this problem will take 15 to 20 minutes for you to work out. So the time is now 12:10. So we'll again, I'll be here, so we can again commence session at 12:25. So please work out this task. I'll be here. If you have any doubts regarding the File.io, please let me know. I can explain. So, or else you can work out this task. If you have any doubt, please type in the chat window so that we can get back to you. Otherwise, you can work out this task.